So today we are on the 5th and final racial starting city of Hoelbrak. Now, in my personal rankings, I don't know why I've decided to rank the cities as we've gone along with the commentary here. But in my personal rankings, I think Hoelbrak is my least favorite. And it's not necessarily that I think there's some massive quality drop here or that, you know, the studio didn't do such a good job or whatever. It's just, once again, it's a snowy place. I'm not really that into the snow. And it's also not a dense place. So the idea of the Norn, I remember pre-release very, very, very clearly, was that they built big. Like, the community had started to wonder, what, you know, Divinity's Reach is so cool. Rat Assume's really obvious. What's cool about it? It's a giant floating cube and all this stuff. You can get a really good sense of Lion's Arch. What's cool about Hoelbrak? What's the idea there? And I guess the studio have been wondering that as well. Like, what makes it unique? Well, the Norn are big. And so I guess ArenaNet went with this idea that they build really big too. Kind of like what the Ascalonians were in the original game. Now, the Norn obviously were in Guild Wars 1, and there, they didn't really build big there. It wasn't a big thing. I mean, definitely they had large structures and stuff around, but it wasn't some core facet of who they are. But as far as Hoelbrak's concerned, I guess ArenaNet really wanted to run with that ball. It's funny because you don't see, like, these giga constructions anywhere else in the Shiverpeaks. You know, most lodges and homesteads aren't even as big as this one here. This is Ayers, by the way. Fascinating place with all these statues around here. References to Guild Wars 1, references to Guild Wars 2, and even some, I think one of those statues is kind of a character that we really don't get to know much about. In particular, this whole place is ran by Newt Whitebear, and his wife is like this really cool, mysterious character in the franchise that they've talked a lot about around Hoelbrak. But for years now, we hadn't met. So that's one of the cooler things to track about Hoelbrak. I think one of those statues is of her. Or maybe that was in a different area. But more on the idea of the Norn building big. Now that's cool. I like that. Especially since in this whole new engine and stuff, they could do those kinds of things. But it did come with a downside. I think I'd really like snowy areas if I had lots of opportunity to be in, like, cozy, warm campfires indoors, you know, looking out at the frigid outside. You know, it's a bit like when you're trying to fall asleep at night and there's a thunderstorm or just heavy rain on your window. You feel extremely cozy and comforted. But because they built all the buildings so big here, I never feel cozy. And I think ArenaNet clearly knew that this was going on because, I mean, look at all the torches and the massive braziers and stuff everywhere. But I never feel cozy, and all the big lodges, it just kind of doesn't work for me. So anyway, we get a good view of the whole place out on the right there. There is one great lodge to each of the spirits of the wild, the greatest spirits of the wild, plus the great lodge, which is on our left right now, which is just this enormous, enormous place. That's where our home instance is. Our home instance being really quite weird as well. It's more like a communal balcony type area that we can hang out in. And, you know, the little officer with Newt Whitebear himself, which we all get to visit. Out in front of the Great Lodge are most of the main services, Trading Post and Bank. Quite often, ArenaNet put the Trading Post and Bank fairly close to each other now. Like, if you look at Lion's Arch, when we get to that video, you'll see there's, like, jump pads connecting the two, at the very least. In Divinity's Reach, they're very close. In the Grove, they're very close. For Hoelbrak, they're really far away. And so, I think for that reason, more than most, this is not even a map I come to for convenience much. You know, you really have to be into the identity of being a Norn to want to come here to execute all of your basic stuff. Now, in truth, I like the way that ArenaNet did this map. I think all of them should have spread out services to this degree. But unfortunately, just other maps were much more efficient. Launch Lion's Arch even was really efficient with the trading posts and the crafting stations that could double up as your bank and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, anyway, entering in now, you get as much as I've just kind of talked crap about how cozy I feel, I do love those giant doors we just walked through that are slightly ajar. And they're just so vast. The doors are hardly even open, but they are so gargantuan that you can comfortably fit anyone through them. And especially me as an Asura player around launch, it was really, really awesome. I actually remember being very surprised when Path of Fire came out and certain mounts couldn't get through the door. It was like we were finally big enough that the door felt like relevant in some way. And that was brilliant. Out here, this central area is incredible. There's so many weird interactions with NPCs. And fun stories you can hear. That is the Fang of the Serpent. They talked a lot about that pre-release. So the idea is that the Norn have got this legend. The first person that can chip that tooth is going to be the one that will destroy the Serpent itself. Jormag, the Elder Ice Dragon. Of course, when the game came out, we were just looking at Zaitan, so it was sort of there for many years. Eventually, a later Living World update does return us here. Even better than that, you've got all this Jotun story here. One of the most fascinating characters that the devs ever wrote or implemented is a Jotun who is trying to tell the story of his people, and he has all these weird takes on, like, the gods and how they gave magic to the races of the world and how they'd given it to the Jotun, but then, like, almost, like, capriciously took it away and stuff. So he's a really, really fascinating character. Absolutely recommend, if you're going to be on this map, just hang around at the Fang for a while until a Jotun walks in and goes on a little speech and a conversation, and you can actually press F on him and follow up on it. Really, really, really good. So, you know, Hoelbrak definitely does have its highlights. So as we move into the central area now, there's something kind of interesting about this map. If you watch my Ratasum episode in the playlist, you'll recall me talking a lot about how that changed from its initial version in the trailer. Well, Hoelbrak also changed from its original vision in the trailer. You see this giant fire in the middle with the, like, ice or glass that sort of magnifies it? What that's doing is that's actually reflecting beams of light into the sky that show images of the spirits of the wild. So we're heading to Wolf Lodge right now, and if you look way up in the sky, you can see that there's like a sparkling image of wolf up there. They come from that cool contraption in the center of the town. In the initial trailer, none of that was there. In fact, in the initial trailer, Hoelbrak looks smaller. The buildings themselves still look really big, but it feels like at some point the devs decided to spread everything out. So you see this huge, like, road here. This kind of wasn't here. It was sort of like the lodge opened straight into the central area, and that glass thing wasn't there. It was more of like a hole. So yeah, I think Hoelbrak did go through some changes, and you can really only just glimpse it in the first trailer, unlike Ratasum, which has a lot of airtime dedicated to it in this big fly-through. In the snowy areas, they were kind of a little bit briefer. So it's a beautiful place. It's the Shrine to Owl, and not just Owl, but also you've got Wolverine here, various lost spirits of the wild, I think Ox as well. Which they did end up developing those stories and pushing them forward, even much more recently to when this video has actually been produced, which is very cool. And obviously, nearby the town, but not in the town, is a full-on lodge that's now dilapidated in the Snowdon Drifts to Owl, which if you've watched that episode, you've seen, and is actually very close to where we're wandering around right now. So another cool thing about Newt Whitebear is not just his missing wife, so to speak. I don't think missing's the right word, but mysterious in the background wife. But also he's got 2 sons, and there's all this story about how they, like, fall out. So that steading we just went to there, Skarty's steading, that's one of his sons. And we'll go to Sigfast. In fact, I think Sigfast steading is going to be where I end this map completion route, which is hopefully going to be quite fun for us. Oh, or maybe I'll end it with the Ice Brood. I think I might end it with the Ice Brood. In any case, that's another nice little thing, and you can speak to the character there. You can actually be kind of a dick. And so this was something I really noticed when I was shooting the full personal story playthrough series I put on YouTube. Now, on that series, I really noticed if you speak to a lot of the Norn and hang around them a lot, you can be really kind of rude and really bashful and kind of nasty. And I guess the sense is that the Norn, they have very thick skin. Like, literally physically, they have thick skin, but also they don't let petty complaints and things get to them, so they're all very blunt, and they're all very to the point, and they're quite rude, but, you know, they don't linger on such things, so you can kind of play into that a bit as a character here, but it's weird because it just almost feels like you're a bit of a dick as you wander around, and that the Norn are dicks to each other as well. That's a hard balance to strike. I really love what ArenaNet were going for with it, at the very least. I think it's great. So these cave areas are brilliant as well. One of the festivals that takes place here in this map, called Dragon Bash, very new, the newest festival that was ever added, actually adds a cool roller beetle race as well, which makes these roads into something of a raceway. And it tends to be now that while I'm in this cave, I think about that more than anything else. We also walked past a small graveyard. Now, that graveyard has a few random NPCs and interesting tidbits. They're not really graves, by the way, they're cairns, I think, as well. Anyway, one of them is dedicated to a character that dies in Ghosts of Ascalon. So that's something to keep an eye out for as well. Again, a little treat for the novel readers. It strikes me that Ghosts of Ascalon had a lot of treats, while Sea of Sorrows and Edge of Destiny had kind of less. And it might be because Ghosts of Ascalon was being written right around when a lot of this stuff was being made, so it was easy to kind of just cross-pollinate. And those other books were a bit later in development, and so maybe they were more focused on other things, and they couldn't spend time on that. But yeah, you do get a nice little hint there as well. One of the things I've always liked about this map, always captivates me, is not only does each of the Great Lodges have, like, multiple floors, like, one of them has a full menagerie in it. Do you remember at Divinity's Reach, where we found, like, a bit of a zoo in an area? Well, that's the same here, except it's just in a portion of one of these lodges. They're so cool. But I also love out the front of them, these great ice sculptures. You know, outside Bear Lodge, there's these 2 great icy bears. And in fact, the vista that was placed on top of one of them, I think is a really, really nice little touch. But they're so brilliant. The only thing that's a bit unfortunate is there's so much vertical space ArenaNet could have played with. Now, they do this kind of balcony thing, you know, like there are some raised ledges you can go to. But if I were to look directly up on the camera right now, in Raven here, you would see it goes really high. And it would be so cool if there was stuff to do up there, especially here at the Raven Lodge, because, you know, they could have ravens flying around up there. A little bit like the jumping puzzle, I guess, in Wayfarer, but, you know, do things up in the rafters. I don't know. Nowadays, with the sky scale and stuff, they could totally go for it. But it's almost like, you know, part of the experience is lost because you can't really climb up too high. Maybe that's all just foolishness that I'm saying there. Maybe that's completely unnecessary. So this vista is a little bit trickier to get, and I completely forgot about this. I haven't done it for so long. If you're not using a mount or something to climb. And there, accidentally glide. Let's ignore that. You actually want to jump on these little frozen platforms. Which also, I'll note, I really like these frozen platforms, and I feel like the devs don't use them enough. Like, when they do jumping puzzles, they've got, like, their go-to assets, like the ruined tile set, or, I don't know whether the tile set is the right word there, but, you know, they've got, like, various asset pools of, like, broken bits of ruin, which you can climb around on, like broken stairways and stuff, or certain generic kinds of rocks, or mushrooms, or whatever. For the snowy areas, they seem to have developed those, like, little rocks and outcrops and stuff, and they look great, but they're not used much. Really, they're not. So it feels a bit special going for that vista to me, just because that asset feels a bit different. These are the kind of things that go through my mind at this point, having played as much of the game as I have. So yeah, the final lodge here. The lodges are kind of inconsistent as well as to how many map completion objectives they have in them. But nearly always you can speak to prominent NPCs here and learn a lot more about what this lodge is all about. One thing I've always thought was a bit of a shame and a limitation with the game is obviously at the character creator, you get a choice of which lodge you belong to, which is your, like, favored patron spirit. But it doesn't really affect anything. And in fact, in most biographies, it doesn't affect, for most of the races, there's a choice in there that doesn't really affect anything. And I've always kind of wondered what motivated ArenaNet to put that in. What were they going to do? Have a whole other step of the personal story that related to that third question? Like, for the Asura, you could choose your inventor and stuff like that. And I wonder whether maybe Hoelbrak kind of reveals the true story, which is maybe at one point they had an idea that 2 questions of your biography would affect early game story. And the third question, maybe, would affect where your home instance was. And in Hoelbrak, that makes perfect sense. Maybe the spirit you choose shouldn't have affected story. Maybe the spirit you choose just changes what lodge you literally go and live in. But that's not the case. There's one unified lodge all Norn live in, and that's up at the Great Lodge. So you kind of lose that little bit of flavor, but I kind of want to feel like I'm from there, you know? And then maybe with the humans, which are especially layered, the humans kind of get a 5th biography choice, but it's only embedded within the story of another one. But that choice is choosing where you're descended from. If you pick the Lost Sister storyline, you can choose if you are from Cantha or Ascalon or Crichton. Not every human gets to pick that, but if you choose the right route, you can. So again, it's a little bit inconsistent, but maybe that originally was going to change which quarter of Divinity's Reach you were from. Nice prominent statue of Jorah there, by the way, from the original game, who I was confused with Air, unfortunately. So yeah, and then obviously the realities of developing all of that stuff maybe wiled it away. But think about it, with the Asura colleges being dedicated in each area of Ratasum, there maybe was a version of the game that would have gone with that. So yeah, there's not really too much more to say, except that out on that ice lake, there's kind of a suggestion that there's a great cave under here. The name Hoelbrak is actually Old Norse in real life, by the way. I think it means like echoey cave or echoey chamber. It's something like that. But there's like some lore that maybe there's a big cave underneath us. I don't know whether the story will ever play into that. The ice lake itself actually hosted Keg Brawl, one of the activities that did make it into the game. So good job to Hoelbrak for that. That does mean it's got something most of the other cities don't, a real place. And then finally the Dragon Hollow. They had this cool story where, you know, The Norn don't judge people as groups. They judge you as an individual. And so if you call yourself a son of Svanir, that doesn't mean they're going to kick you out straight away. You know, they'll judge you as an individual. And so the Sons of Svanir actually have their own little area here in this nasty looking corrupted cave. Good for the dragon, I guess. So there you have it, guys. That is Hoelbrak. Pretty good city. Definitely enjoyable to run around. Hope you enjoyed some of the trivia and memories I've had. Let me know some of yours in the comment, and I will see you for the next one very soon, which is actually the final city of Lion's Arch. Lots to talk about there. It'll be a bit later in the playlist.